Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Dating After a Divorce podcast. I have a friend, colleague, expert here on Zoom today. Her name is Dr. Latifat Akintade. And I get to say her name with my Nigerian accent because she's a fellow Nigerian. Dr. Latifat is a gastroenterologist, founder of the Money Coaching School for Badass Women Physicians. She's also the host of the Money Fit MD podcast, best-selling author of Done with Broke, which I have here. I bought the Kindle version so I could read it before our episode, so I hope you guys can see that. It's the Woman Physician's Guide to More Money and Less Hustle. She combines her interest in personal finance, her training as a certified life coach, and her passion for wellness to help women create their own wealthy life. Her mission is to equip women with the tools they need to be financially liberated, to live well and live fully without burning out. Dr. Latifat, welcome. It's a delight to have you here on Zoom.
Thanks for having me. And oh my goodness, the fact that I had you calling my name the Nigerian way was like, yes, please. I did not have to worry about that part of the stuff. So
I know.
Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. Please tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, where you are.
Absolutely. So I'm Dr. Latifat. You can call me Latifat. I'm a physician. I'm a mama of three little ladies, age 5, 8, and 10. I am married. My husband is an IT guy. And I am the founder of Money Fit MD, which is all things money and mindset for women physicians. You know, it's funny whenever I introduce myself and I say that, I know it sounds like fancy because it's like, oh my goodness, she has this money stuff. She must have known about money from the moment she was born. And that is so not true. If you looked at my life 7 years ago, you would not imagine that I would be here talking to anybody, writing a book about money, or even talking to humans on video. I prided myself in the fact that my singular goal in life is to be an amazing physician, to be a great mom, and to hopefully live this world better and do what I can to decrease disparities that exist in medicine and outside of medicine. That was my entire goal. But it wasn't until I started learning money from myself in a language that makes sense for myself, in a way that makes sense for my life, meaning that I wanted to have money and understand money so that I was not someone that would be apologizing to my kids every single day for choices that I thought I didn't have. I also wanted to be someone who always had the permission, give herself permission to be able to leave whatever it is that is not working well in helping me serve the purpose for which I exist here. And, you know, with your audience, I think that's really pertinent because I know that is, you know, a significant proportion of your people are divorced or divorcing. And as much as I want us to be well in whatever setting we are in, and I want us to give 100% of ourselves to whatever we're in, I also think there is just great freedom in knowing that I have the capacity and the ability to leave this work that may not be serving me, say no to this thing that's not ethically working for me. And so for me, honestly, that was the main reason why I went to learn money for myself, was so that I could practice medicine in a way that helped decrease disparities without having to feel like I had to listen to the system or structures that exist that may not necessarily traditionally have the goal that I have in mind. So money is something that I learned as a protective way to help me keep my voice.
Oh, I love that. So it sounds like, and I've heard this, I have many physicians who are friends, who are colleagues. I think about half my high school class became doctors. So, you know, Nigerians love to become doctors. And I have heard that message that, like, you know, you go into medicine, you want to help people, you went in, you know, and most of them went into it wanting to care for others, wanting to create breakthroughs, wanting to make a difference. And then you get into that system and you find out that, oh, wait a second, the system itself doesn't have the same goal. It's not trying to create the same level of wellness and giving for, you know, patients. Like, you find out that the system is a lot about money, and it's all about moving money around. It's all about gaining as much money as possible, which, like you said, is very similar to going into a marriage where one person comes in and is like, oh my God, I'm going to be a great team player. I want us to create this amazing family. I want us to give to our children. I want us to give to our churches, or, you know, give to the world, build something together. And then you get in there and you find out that the other person was really all about, I want to be served. I want to take, I want to be given to. And so there really is that parallel there. I've heard the same messaging from a lot of doctors who are like, hey, I want to move out of this. I want to change this. So was it a journey for you? Like, the impression, people looking up, and I saw this in your book as well, you talk about how people look at doctors and are like, yes, there's just money coming out of their ears and they can do whatever they want. What was that journey like from the moment you said, hey, this system isn't serving me, you know, the way I'm in the system, the way I'm being a doctor, and then I want to do something different? What was that journey like?
To be honest with you, at the point I made that decision, the system was serving me. It was working well. But I knew that if I did not have the ability to make a choice, there could be potential in future where decisions have to be made. And if it's not going to serve me and my patients, I want to have the freedom to walk. Right. So I was not burnt out, but I saw people that were burnt out. And I saw the difference between people that were there by choice versus people that were not there by choice. Right. And I did not want to be one of the later groups of people where they were there not by choice or didn't think. And it's not all about money. That's why I talk about mindset as well. It's the money, but also the mindset, because a lot of us have been socialized in the communities that we live in this world that we live in, where we think that getting a paycheck regularly every month is what leads to freedom, right? So again, you could have all the money in the world, but when you don't understand true freedom, both of those things are not going to work together, and you're not going to think you have a choice in terms of whether you want to steer or not. But to answer your question, though, it was not fun. It was not pretty. It was not cute. It was literally me going on Google, like, what is a 401k again? How do you budget? Ew, I hate budgeting. I don't like math, spreadsheets. I hate spreadsheets. So literally I had all the things that I hated, and I told myself I couldn't do. And so I was on a mission to make money make sense for me, because I'm like, I'm smart. Right? I've done this hard work of becoming a physician. Like all your audience, they've done amazing things in life. So we're incredibly smart. So the fact that money doesn't make sense has nothing to do with smartness, obviously, because if it was, we would have figured it out. So I knew that it only had to be because there was a miscommunication or there was a language misalignment. So it was sort of like, okay, how do I learn this, read it, and then make it make sense for me? And then say that out. And I realized that, okay, there were many people that the traditional way that money is being taught isn't working for. So it became more of me chewing it, processing it for myself, and then, being able to communicate that. And women going, oh my goodness, now it finally makes sense. And especially because you're talking about it without judgment, without shaming, because you already assumed we're smart, which is the truth about us, versus the way that it's been taught traditionally, where it almost assumes that the audience is not smart. And it's like, you obviously were not thinking about us when you created that, because we are smart. So stop judging us, stop shaming us. We already feel like crap for not knowing. And what the world of women needs is women and people explaining it to us, understanding that we're incredibly smart. But the fact that I don't speak Dutch doesn't mean I'm not smart. It just means that I don't know Dutch yet. So explain Dutch to me like a smart chick. And that's what I do with money.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And there is that narrative around about women, that women are not good with money, just like women are not good with math. Women are not good with logic or STEM or all of those things, which none of that is true. So you're right. There is a way that money is presented, or conversations around money are presented to women, that is condescending and really assumes that the gap will always be there. You know, I was talking to an attorney at one point about, just like legacy items. And I asked a question about a trust. I was trying to understand how a trust worked. And I said, so, is this kind of like what happens, like if the person passes away, what happens then? And I asked I wanted to understand a really small piece of the process. And he just kind of like, he was like, the frustration on his face. I was like, well, this is the first question I've asked you, first of all. He's like, no, that's not how that works. And he was just like, and I was just like, and I just never went back. I was like, oh, okay, you're that person.
Yeah, you're that person. Exactly. Just take your money and go somewhere else. Yeah. And, I 100% agree with you that the way that our brains are, and not to say we're all the same, even as women, but the way we think about stuff we use a different part of our brain in general. So what we're learning has to work for that. But most importantly, having the confidence in ourselves to know that,
Yeah.
again, that went a long way for me when I realized that it wasn't that I was stupid. I am
Mhm.
smart. So if this isn't
Yeah.
making sense, it's only because the person that's explaining it isn't necessarily transcribing it or translating it in a place that makes sense, because it has nothing to do with my smartness. So I think when we come to these conversations like that, whether you're talking to an attorney, you're talking to an advisor, if you choose to work with one, an accountant, or anybody else, just come in knowing that you're smart. And so
Mhm.
you feel confident asking questions, because then the onus is on them to explain it to you in different ways until it clicks, because you're like, okay, I'm smart, it's just not clicking, because it's not, it's like,
Yeah.
in medicine and in science, we talk about like receptors and things have to match, or like key lock, they have to match. So it's more
Yes.
of like, okay, how do we turn this to make sure it's the right lock? Once it does, they're both good, both pieces are good, but we just need
Yeah.
to figure this out, because when it locks it up, I'm like, oh, really, that's it? I'm like, yeah, that's literally it. They're like, oh, I'm like, I know, me too.
Yeah. Yeah. I can do that. It makes
I
sense
can
now.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about sort of like how understanding pieces. And I have questions like kind of like I went through your book and there were different parts of the journey that you had talked about. But starting from someone who, and I know you have coached women who have been divorced or are divorcing around their money, what kinds of situations have you seen among your clients when it comes to whether it is they were divorced and the issue they when they came to you, the issues were already there, or the divorce happened while they were working with you?
So, this is going to sound funny, but I love working with divorced women, and I'll tell you why. I love working with women, period, because I think we're badass. I love working with divorced women because a lot of times when they come to me, it's because they want to learn money. Maybe they've been deferring to their partners in the past, or maybe they're like, okay, I've lost money through my divorce, where this amount, I've lost like half of my retirement, and I'm 50
Mm,
years old. And Latifat, I need to figure out a way to not be behind in future. How do I do
mhm,
this? Right. So a lot of times people will come to me almost freaking out a little bit. There is some shame in a lot of cases, because people are like, the shame of, why did I defer to someone else, right? And I had people that were not divorced when they came into my community, and after they've been there, their life was happening and they ended up getting divorced, because physicians have a higher rate of divorce in general. So, but the key is, they came in thinking that there were things they were missing. Some of them came in
mm,
pissed, because imagine working for years and having a financial separation or divorce because of the inability for communication to happen, including financial
mhm,
conversations. And now the judge says, thank you so much for all your crazy work and all the crazy calls you've done as a physician, and working 40 hours or 30 hours shift straight, and half of that we're going to give it to your spouse. And you can say whether that's right or not. That's not the point of today. And so
mhm,
helping women understand, number one, of what the rule of money is. The
mm,
reason why we have money is not so that we can hoard money. The reason why we
mhm,
have money is so that we can have the ability to live our life in freedom. So if you've lost your
mm,
money, quote unquote, your money, because you decided that that relationship was more of like a hell or stuck or not free, you essentially just prepaid for your freedom, which is what most people want to do when they're 65 or 70, but you happen to do that now. And the beauty of it is, now we just have to figure out, you know what, you've paid your money, or would you, and I've literally had to ask my patients this, my clients this, are you wishing you were back with your money
mhm.
and in that relationship, or are you glad that you're done with that relationship? And when they say that
Yeah.
they're glad they're done, I'm like, good, your money has done its work. So now the question is, how do we now
Mm,
build forward? And just understanding that in general just gives people peace, or even makes it easier for them to go through the process of recovery or healing, because it's like, I'm badass, I did that, as opposed to, I lost
yes.
all that money. Like, I did something that a lot of people are afraid to do. People stay in relationships that are not, that are literally feeling like chokeholds on their life, because they're afraid of what would happen if they separated from the money. But you're badass enough to
Mm,
decide that that is not enough reason for you to say, because you did have a choice, right? So
yeah.
that's one of the things that I see a lot of. There's the guilt and the shame, and there is the behind. But the reason why I love working with those people is we are badass. Women are amazing. And I know that when when something really pisses us off and we put our back into it, it's impossible for it to not work. So my
Yeah.
women do crazy things within a short period of time. They're like diversify their income. I literally had someone, like, we found out she was getting paid 100K less than her colleagues
Mm.
doing the same work in same city. So this is not a geographical issue. She was like, none of that, not taking that crap. She moved to a different job, which automatically was like about $100,000 increase per year, right? And now
Wow.
she has that money to be able to do what she wants to do, to be able to invest, and using the power of compounding, which is what happens when you give your money time to actually stay invested. Like,
Mhm.
she is already back on track within like literally 2 years, right?
Wow.
So it's, the key is, the worst thing we could do is stay afraid and hide. The next worst thing we
Mm.
could do is not ask for help, because that doesn't only hurt us in future, but also makes it harder for us to move forward, because now we're staying in anger, right? In guilt, in
Mm.
shame. And that is literally like giving the power to the person that helped you have a miserable life. And now you're letting them make you have a miserable present and future, when you could literally be completely free of all that nonsense.
Wow, 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 wow. I wanted to like just start wow, everything you said. That is amazing. That is the thing. That is so spot on when it comes to divorce, like so spot on. One, that's the price. Sometimes that's the price of freedom. Sometimes, like I have a client whose ex left her in $100,000 in credit card debt, not secure debt, credit card debt. And she paid it off in less than 3 years. Like she was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna start this business. I'm gonna pay it off. But she had already spent 30 years in that relationship before she filed for a divorce. And she was like, yep, $100,000 is what I paid for my freedom. Yeah, it wasn't fair, whatever, but like, if that's the price tag on the freedom that I have now, she worked with me for 6 months. She's repartnered, amazing guy. Like that 100K, like she doesn't even think about it anymore. Doesn't think
Yep.
about it anymore. Yeah.
Right.
So sometimes there is a price for freedom. And like you said, money is not for, I think we've turned money value into like pieces of paper or, ones and zeros in the bank. It's shifted how we used to think about it. Before, money was like cows and sheep and land. So you could see it was tangible. You had the thing that you wanted. But now because it's paper, we've been influenced into thinking it needs to be in the bank versus no, what does that paper represent? Like you said, does it represent my freedom? Does it represent travel? Does it represent food? Like you need to have like a
Yeah.
tag for your life on your dollars. It's not that the dollars just sit there. And then you talked about how badass women were. Oh my God. Like one of the things I do with my clients is I'm like, you've got to go back into your marriage and retrieve all your strengths. Everything that you did, because you're sitting here beating yourself up for marrying that guy. What about everything else you did? What about how you parented? What about all your achievements? What about everything you contributed? And often they find out that like half of what was built in the marriage, more than half of it was them. They were the ones that did the things that they now felt like they lost. And if you did it, you can do it again.
100%. It's
100%.
the non-tangible, right? And that's a thing, like when it comes to money or wealth, there's a tangible, the dollar, we put culture, systems, we put value on the dollar, but there's a lot that goes into it. And, we can think about like the monetary versus the non-monetary wealth. And when we take a step back and put all that together, we start to see the part that we've done. But unfortunately, what happens as a culture is there some traditional, and I'm putting that in quote, roles that women play in the family that doesn't necessarily get the recognition and value because women were the ones that were doing it, right? So if
Mhm.
we can start to put value to the work that we're doing, then we'll realize that no, we didn't just bring the money, we brought more than that. We brought a lot into that picture. And now if we now use that as currency to fuel, to remember our badassery, like if you want to put value, if you were a stay-at-home mom, maybe when you were married and you were doing laundry, what was the price value of that? Put that down on it.
Mhm.
Like what, like childcare, put the cooking, put that down, and now see how much you created. And that is the person that you are. Now you can now choose to turn that into a different kind of currency. It's like I was talking to one of my clients yesterday that we are interested in as humans, and the human brain is funny because a lot of us are taught more from a poverty mindset. But it's like when a kid has water in front of them and they're like, oh, this is water, it's great. And now they take that water and it's turned into ice cube. It's still water. It's still, it's still water, the actual thing. But now they're crying because they don't have water. When it's because they're intentionally put it into a different form. And so the wealthy part of you is you need to start seeing the different form in terms of like what your money or wealth is coming into. So like women, for example, we just talked about the tangible, like it may not be cash. It may be that you bought an asset, you bought a property that's money, income generating. And now your brain is freaking out and say, but we don't have cash security. It's like, what the hell? You turned the water into ice and now you're freaking out, right?
Yes.
So I want us to start thinking about the different forms that money and wealth come in so that we can truly see the abundance and not the scarcity, but the abundance of what we have, what we've created, and come into it from that badass so that you can go ahead and do more and create more of whatever it is you want to create in your life.
Yes. I'm really understanding what value is. Value versus a dollar amount. Like, well, we have, and like you said, we have so much value, right? Like I have this podcast, I have, thousands of downloads every month. I'm like that. I mean, there's no like exchange of money necessarily on the podcast or in this conversation that we're having, but like, there's so much value in here. Just one of the things that you said can create $1 million for one of the listeners. Just one of the things you said clicking into place and them taking action from that mindset can translate into $1 million. I love that. Love that so, so much. Okay. Let's talk about some of the misconceptions, right? Like there was a few things that you said that were just like truth bombs in your book. One, you talked about, first of all, the importance of liking yourself. You connected emotions and money. Like emotions are so important. You talked about like spending in ways that were like mind-blowing, like the way we're taught about spending or how the narrative is around spending or around debt and how that narrative actually keeps you from building wealth. So what are like the common misconceptions that you think are in the culture or that women are given that's actually keeping them from building wealth?
Absolutely. You mentioned one earlier, which is things like women are bad with money. That's even like a lie. That's a lie, right? Like we're based on data, we're less likely to invest, but when we do, we actually do a kick-ass job of it, but nobody tells us that part, right? We get these pieces of information that becomes knitted into our stories. And when we're about to take actions with money, we look at it from the context of the background story that we have. It's no wonder we're not taking actions when it comes to money. But the way that I would think about it is when I talk about money, there's the action part of money, and that is important, right? You cannot, you have to do something, you have to give value, get money, right? In order to actually create the dollar that you want. But all that is not going to work well if you don't do the first part, which is what I call like opening to wealth. Opening to wealth is the part of like the mindset piece. That's the part where we remove the blocks that's standing between where we are and where we want to go. And the reason why all those questions that you're asking me is really, really important for your audience is everybody says, but tell us about the numbers. And I'm like, the numbers is the easy part. This is the real issue that nobody is teaching us. And how do I know? Because I've lived it. And when I found out that this is the main reason why we're not great with money, I literally started crying. Because I'm like, you mean I've wasted time banging my head against the wall, thinking I just need to learn math one more time, when it was never about math. Like actual money math is like basic algebra, but it's the part of this opening up our lives and our brains to the world that actually is important. So the misconceptions fit in there, because if you have a misconception, you're not going to be able to grow in the way that you want to grow. And even if you do grow, you're not going to have the freedom that you want to create. And even if you have the freedom that you want, you're not going to see the freedom that exists in your life because you're like looking somewhere else for it when the freedom already existed in your life. So I'm depending on where you guys are listening, pick whatever serves you based on where you are and plug that into your life. But there's some things that may be more advanced and some things that may be where you are or like basic, just depends on where you guys, individual humans listening, right? So when it comes to the misconceptions that we need to take care of, number one is money is hard. It's hard to do money. You know what is hard? Being broke is hard.
That's true. That's very true.
Right? We get to choose our hard. But even if money was hard, everybody listening to my voice right now has done things that's harder than money. So If you're not creating the result you want when it comes to money, it's not because it's hard. It's probably because it's behind you and you're not looking at your sort of like the blind spots. And the blind spot is your thoughts about money. Money is the root of evil. I hear that a lot. And people don't understand how powerful things like this are, because it's like, well, you're working every day, whether you have a business or you work for someone trying to earn money. But if subconsciously you think money is bad, there are going to be micro ways you're not even thinking about where you're hiding from money, where you're repelling money. So, for example, when you think money is the root of evil, you're not going to be jazzed up to actually ask for a raise. When you believe that money is a tool for good, and you believe that money is not something that you hoard, money is something that flows through you now in short term and also in long term, which means that you need to invest so that you have access in the midterm and in the long term. But you know that the money is passing through you, and you investing is not you hoarding it, is you preparing for your future self to have access for more money to flow through them. So when you understand that money flows through and you like yourself, you trust yourself enough as a vessel for good, you know that money is in a great hands when it goes through you, because the people and the communities that you put it in are exactly the community that needs money and should have money. Suddenly you're like, you know what? I got to renegotiate this because this is even for like greater good. So you're more likely to want to ask for what you should be getting paid. You're more likely to not be underpricing the things that you're trying to sell, because you know that money is best served in your hands, right? And I also remind people that every money you're trying to get actually already exists, right? So it already exists. Money is just flowing from one person to the other. Like when I pay my bills, money flows to them, it flows to someone else. So when we start to think about that, when I think about the communities that I serve, the women physicians, the minority communities that I serve that have traditionally not had access to wealth, you bet your butt I want to get paid. You bet your butt I want to learn how to build and grow investments and figure out more ways to make investments accessible to my women, because that's where it needs to get to. And suddenly I'm not just advocating for myself, I'm advocating for the people that are going to get access to it through me. So that's the work that gets me jazzed up. And of course, I'm now going to be more open to it, because all the socialized crap that I've been taught is now silent compared to me opening up myself once I understand that money is a tool for good. I am a great vessel for money, because the things that I'm going to do with money have my name on it and they're waiting to be taken care of. I get jazzed up.
Yeah. No, amazing. Like you said, there are these micro decisions that we make when we're afraid of money, when we're concerned about money, when we're afraid of our bills, or we're afraid of our debt. Listen, you all need to, even if you're not a physician, you really need to read Latifat's book, because I recognize a lot of things that I had done in the past. Like when my ex and I were in debt and we're working, like things that I did in those times that were like micro decisions that did cost me money. And one of them, I don't know if you had this example in the book or not, but I remember this is something that I had learned about myself, was I would avoid opening my mail. When I was in the state of like, we have too many bills, we have too little money, all of that, I wouldn't open the bills. And of course, we all know in the end, you get hit with late fees. You miss checks that come in the mail that have a deadline to be deposited when you don't open your mail. And I remember this, like, I'm thinking back, this is probably like early 2000s. And I remember we had two young kids, they shared a bedroom. And so we had like, quote unquote, our guest room had like piles of papers, piles of mail that I just wouldn't open because I was just so afraid of what was in there. And later on, of course, I would get hit with the fees and things like that. And I'd be like, but at that time, I didn't connect the dots between that fear and what I was doing.
Yeah, and honestly, I think we all just need to be a little bit kinder to ourselves and have more empathy for ourselves and give more grace, because when we do, because what happens is the reason why we avoid things like looking at bills is, number one, we think overwhelmed. We like start to, dislike ourselves, we judge ourselves, and we make ourselves feel worse. So because of the fear of like feeling worse is why we avoid getting paid through the checks that's coming in, where we're increasing our late payment and interest payment through the stuff we're not looking. And what ends up happening is we now feel worse. So it becomes like a cycle of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, when we need to, I like treating it more like data on a curve. right? When we look at
Mhm.
like math from like, elementary school or middle school, when you just have like dots on the curve, and every single thing when it comes to your money is literally just a dot on the curve. You
Yeah.
just get to like, we cannot judge ourselves based on one dot. It's like looking at a basketball game and you're looking at one team and the score and you're like, they won. Or
Yeah.
someone scored, they're like, they lost. It's like, that's just a dot in the whole story, right? So how
Yes.
about we calm down, take a step back, and understand that we actually have the ability to create a different future, because what we have right now when it comes to our money is not even a reflection of who we are anymore. It's a reflection
Mhm.
of who we were and the decisions that we
Mm.
made. So now it's
Yes.
like, okay, everything I see was created by Latifat in the past. And now what does Latifat in the present want to do for Latifat in the future, right? So
Yeah.
it's judging your past self is useless because you ain't going to change the past. But when
Right.
you keep judging your past self, it actually is going to show up and it's going to cause you to actually judge your current self in future.
Yeah.
So it's more liberating to just forgive her. She did the
Mhm.
best she could. Maybe she didn't have access to this podcast that we're talking on today. Maybe she didn't have access to my book. Maybe she didn't know that it was safe for her to ask for help. And maybe she didn't even know that her brain was literally like messing with her when she thought she was going to die by opening up
Mhm.
an envelope, right?
Yeah,
That
I
was
know. Isn't
her,
that, yeah,
right?
like
It's like,
this
I'm
is
going
this
to
little
die.
envelope here.
It's
Yeah.
like, I'm going to die, right? We all are going to die, by the way, at the end of the day, but hopefully not anytime soon. And it's not going to be an envelope unless you're like pissed off some like mafia somewhere. They're sending you some like chemicals in an envelope, which that's not happening today. But the key is, let's just have some kindness for ourselves and
Mhm.
understand that this is all data, right? The
Mhm.
amount of money you have, if you have multiple seven figures, it's great, but it doesn't make you a better person. In the
Yeah.
same way, if you have negative $500,000, it's not great, but it doesn't make you an amazing or horrible person. Who you are is different and separate from what your money is. And when we start to understand that, we start to build ourselves to be this powerful human. And we'll also start to see that money is powerful. And the goal is for us to partner together to create the great things that we're meant to do in this world. But you're not your money. Like, I think about that, and that's a part of freedom that I want everybody to also get. Is I'm doing well when it comes to my finances, but even with that, I always have to continue to be intentional about separating who I am from what I have. And the beauty
Mm.
of that is that it actually helps me have more and create more, because the more I separate it, the more I'm free to take what may feel like a bigger risk than what I would feel if I was attaching my identity to that money. So if everything that I
Mm.
had right now was to break down into dust, I would not like it, of course. But because I know that I'm a different person than where I was 7 years ago, because I've
Mm.
learned the timeless principles and foundations that are in the book that you have in your hands, I know that I can create it again. And I'll actually create it faster than I did
Yeah.
before, because now I'm a different person than when I started 7 years ago.
Oh, I love that. That's so, so good. Let's talk about liking yourself, loving yourself, and separating. Maybe the separation, because the cultural narrative puts it all together. There's just so much shame around. I heard someone talking last week about, I don't follow a lot of the news, but apparently there was some kind of like movement somewhere to like have use taxes to correct some things that happened during redlining and have people who have better credit pay for it. I don't know the details. There's something out there in the
Something
news
out
about that.
there. Yeah.
And the person was very outraged and referred to the people who had poorer credit, like those people, like as though they had done like all these bad things and now they were being, they didn't deserve any kind of support. So there was like just that shaming tone, which you hear that so much around debt. You hear it around money.
Yeah.
And it's really a challenge to help an individual separate themselves from that narrative, because they've had that narrative since they were children. Like
Yeah.
I heard that even back in Nigeria, same thing, narrative about money. Here in the US, the narrative is even louder.
Yep.
How do you start separating yourself from what the culture says you are because of your money?
This is something that it took me time and intentionality, but it's literally as simple as you have to turn down the volume.
Mm.
Turn down the volume of what you don't want your future to be like, and increase the volume of what you want your future to be like. That's literally it. And for me, even as a woman that's talking about money, throughout my learning process, I had to figure out money for myself in a way that made sense. And there were times in that journey where I looked at more of the mainstream, if you want to call it like bro finance. And even I judged myself and like, okay, am I really doing it right or am I doing it wrong? Is this like fake money pathway? And then I look at the result that I'm creating and I'm like, I'm paid off my debt. Like,
Mm,
faster than I thought I was ever going to pay my debt, which I don't mean that debt is bad, but the one that I wanted to pay off, I paid it off at the time, like twice as like fast than I wanted to. I was not grinding to death. I was not hustling. My life was good. I liked my kids. They liked me. Like, and so I'm like, wait a minute, I'm getting the result that I want, yet my brain is telling me that you're doing it wrong because you're not doing it like them. And the reason
mhm,
why it's working is exactly because I'm not doing it like them. Right. So I had to
mm,
literally pay to be in containers where the work of the containers was to help me silence the external noise so I could listen to myself. So I could actually go from my critical part of my brain, the more analytical part of my brain, to actually following the part of my brain that's like, okay, what are we supposed to do? More flow than like,
mhm,
I spend time on the floor, I spend time in the math. If I'm going to buy a property, I want to know the math. But if I'm trying to decide where I should buy the property, I go with the flow. Right. So that's kind of how I think about it, where I'm dipping my leg into my brain. I'm spending time in different parts of myself, which is all
mhm,
part of me, but spending different amount of times as needed because they're all tools that I have access to. But you have to do that. You cannot keep listening to, everything that is being said out there, judgment. They may be right, but it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. The question is this serving the purpose that you're trying to create right now? And if it's not, then there's no point listening to it. I haven't
yeah,
watched the news in like 3 years.
mm,
I haven't watched the news in 3 years. Why?
yeah,
Because every time I listen to the news, I hear about another thing that's been done, another racist act that's been done. I hear about
mhm,
another signs of hopelessness in the world.
yeah,
Hear about another thing that's happening that is literally going to keep me on my bed for 24 hours because I'm like an empath or whatever you want to call it. Like I feed off of people's like sadness. And now
mhm,
what ends up happening is it throws me back like 6 months ago. And I literally came to the point where I'm like, it almost feels like there's a strategy out there where every time you see minorities and people and women and people of color do an amazing thing, let's unroll this information about something bad that's happened to their kind so we can throw them back again. And I literally had
mm,
to see that I have the privilege to unsubscribe and use
yeah,
that privilege that I have to unsubscribe so I can do more good for the women that I want to serve, because it doesn't help me, even though it's good to be aware, it doesn't help me serve the purpose that's going to bring us forward. Right. So at the end
yes,
of the day, you have to ask, it's not about right or wrong. It's more of, is this helpful right now or is this hurtful right
mhm,
now? And for me, this was literally taking me back and increasing disparities, because if my business is
mhm.
not well, if my finances are not well, I'm being a part of the problem I'm trying to fix. So
So good. So good. Yeah. So really deciding and having that self-trust that, okay, my journey is going to be my journey. Like, okay, I'm divorced. I am starting over. Instead of looking for a prescription, saying, where is my mind right now? Where are my thoughts? Where are my feelings? How do I feel right now? And deciding the mindset that you're going to need. Like, is this mindset going to get me where I want to go? And if it
exactly.
isn't going to get me where, there's no shame in being in that place because we're human. We're going to have all of these feelings. But if I have this goal, what thought and feeling needs to get me there? What do I need to heal? And sometimes you need to take a moment to like heal something. Sometimes you need to take a moment to like say, okay, I've got some money trauma here. I'm having emotional flashbacks around this incident. So this is not to say, okay, just override it and go read, I don't know, romance novel or whatever. Just say,
Or
oh, okay,
maybe you want to.
I need to address this. So sometimes they're addressing it to slowing down and healing, taking care of that part. And then sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I'm good. I just have this thought that's not serving me that came from that news article I watched. I'm just going to turn that off, pick up the thought, the thinking that I'm deciding is good for me, and then just run with that.
Exactly, exactly. And understanding too is you're going to do it imperfectly. And
Mm,
that's the goal. The goal is not
yeah.
to, I hate when, practice makes perfect. I think it's actually hurtful because a lot of times we're practicing with the goal of perfection. The goal is never perfection. The goal is
Mm,
imperfection. So you're never going to be perfect about it. And so you're going to do it imperfectly every single time, but that's exactly the goal. But your imperfection can
yeah.
still create the exact result that you're looking for. So perfection is not what creates results. Imperfection is what creates the result you're looking for. Unless you're a
Yeah.
physician that's doing surgery. In that case, we want perfection perfection, of course, but this is something that I literally have had to help my clients, because a lot of my people are physicians, and our perfection, like we're groomed to be perfect and do it pristine. That's how we save lives. And then to now be able to say, okay, that works in that setting, but in this setting, it actually is going to hurt and prevent you from launching and doing what you want to do. So I want us to embrace that imperfection a little bit more. And we're just going to keep doing better and different and better and different. And, Brooke Castillo talks about your 100 fails. I love that
Yes.
idea. So the goal is just continue doing it. And in the wake, you will leave a lot of success with you. So
Yeah, 100%. I've heard, and I identify with that. I've heard that so much with my clients where it's like, I can't take the first step. I can't invest that first $50. I can't pay for, in fact, I hear it in dating, like, I don't want to pay for the apps until I'm sure I'm going to do it right. And I'm like, well, you learn to do it right by taking that $50 and paying for the app for 1 month and getting in the water.
Yep, exactly.
I'm going to do it. Like, and in your case, it might be someone putting in $100 or opening up that account or opening up that investment account or getting started in real estate or whatever it is. Like you have to get started and be willing to embrace failure, imperfection, doing it wrong, doing it right, or whatever the definition is, because people have different frames of reference. Doing it right, but not getting the result, quote unquote, doing it wrong, but keeping going, learning, trusting yourself, knowing that like you can create wealth. Thank you so much for your contribution today. I do want to ask you, like, if someone says, okay, I'm here, wherever here is for the individual listening, and they say, I do want to build wealth, right? Like, what is your just like overall advice? Like someone says, well, I want to build wealth. I'm not sure I can, like, there's time, there's all these things that I've heard. What's one thought or one piece of advice you can give them to really help them either keep going or go faster, or like, almost like I'm trying to encapsulate what I'm trying to say. It's like choosing that goal, leaning, putting their back into the goal, wherever it is they're starting from.
I love that. I love that. The first question I'm going to ask is, and I love that you broke that down further, is asking yourself what that means, what wealth means, right? A lot of times people are like, I want to be wealthy. I want to be, and I'm like, I don't even know what that means, because again, we have to try to stop fitting in a box. Right? You get to decide what that means for you. So let's break it down a little bit. What does that mean? I want to be able to work part-time. Okay. So you've decided what you want to be. You want to be someone that works part-time. And this is a part where you borrow from almost like your future self in terms of like, what would that person have done? And if you don't believe in borrowing from your future self, look around and make sure you surrounding yourself with people that are doing or have done what you want to do. And so, people talk about Myron Golden he's not the one that created this, but I really identified with how he made it sound, which is be, do, have, right? Who do you want to be? You've decided you want to be the person that works 3 days a week. What would that person have to do to create that? They would have to know where their money is going. They would have to make sure they like how they're spending. They would have to know how to have other sources of income that's helping them be able to support their lifestyle while they're doing that. They would be investing. Right? Just like literally workshop that and now go do that. And you create it.
Yeah. And that is available to all of us. Like, it's so simple.
Yep.
Like we see it, just go do it. Just be like, I believe that I am that person. I can be that person.
Workshop
and do what they're doing as well.
Workshop it, put it down in numbers, because overwhelm can, again, cause some issues with a lot of people. Put them down in numbers and just one at a time. Don't try to do 2 at a time, one at a time. The person that is working part-time would know to not, maybe they would not eat out every day. Just an example. Do that. They would want to make sure that they're earning, they're negotiated, making sure that even if they're working part-time, they're getting, because it's not just about the quantity, it's about the quality. They're getting paid well for the work that we're doing, right? And for those that are listening, I'm assuming that you're someone that you're creating more value than even you're getting, meaning that if you want to be paid well, I'm assuming that you're an excellent employer or employee. You're giving value, you're serving to the best of your ability without, burning yourself or grinding yourself to death. Like I talk about like badass women physicians or badass women in general, like we take care of stuff, we provide value. So when I'm telling you to pay, it's because I know I'm giving you a return on your investment. So
Mm,
making sure like the quantity, not just the quantity of the hours, but the quality that you're getting paid by the hour is intact, because then that's what someone that wants to work part-time should do. And then now the money that you're creating, are you spending things on like things that depreciates over time, which we call liabilities, or are you increasing your sense of ownership, which is what I want more women and more minorities to do? Are you buying
mm,
things that the value is going to increase over time? Whether that's like, index funds through the stock market, and you could start wherever you are, $100 per month. Most people can find $100 a month. Most people, I want, not everybody, but most people that are probably listening to the podcast can. And sometimes it's a matter of
mm,
like moving your money from spending on things that's depreciation to moving it to spending on things that is going to increase in value over time. And that takes retraining your eyes. And I talk about some of that in the book as well. But it is comparing with other people may not help you. If it's helping get you
mhm,
motivated, then do that. If it inspires you, then do that. But if comparing with someone else is slowing you down, then it's not helpful. But what people do is a lot of times they compare, like, well, it's easy for her to say she's a physician. Trust me, I know lots of physicians that are broker than many people
mm,
walking down the street. Like, or you could say, well, they are a different specialty, or they are younger and know more technology, or like there's always going to be a reason why we think someone else is in a better position. And that's okay, that's helping. But if it's not serving you, then it's time to unsubscribe from that and say, what do
yeah.
I have? What can I create? Let me start from where I am, and I can be an example of what's possible for other people like me in future if I do what needs to be done, right? To have what needs to be had.
Oh, so good. So good, Dr. Latifat. Thank you so much for the advice. Thank you for being here and breaking all of this down. Please tell the audience where they can find you online if they want to get the book, if they are physicians and they want to work with you, if they just want to follow you.
Absolutely. If you guys are watching this on YouTube or on a podcast, it's easy to just go find Money Fit MD at Money FITMD. We're on every platform that you're using for listening. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram as well. The book Done with Broke, The Woman Physician's Guide to More Money and Less Hustle. I'm so glad I wrote that book. I'm so glad. I'm so glad, because there are many people that need to learn this that I don't have the capacity to help one-on-one or even in my group program. So for me, you get to access that, and you can find that on my website, which is moneyfitmd.com, or you can go to Amazon and go find Done with Broke, The Woman Physician's Guide to More Money and Less Hustle.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. So listeners, all of those links will be in the show notes. Again, check out, like the title of the book is just Done. I love it. Done with Broke. The Woman Physician's Guide to More Money and Less Hustle. If you're a physician, for sure, 100%, join the Money Fit MD group. Even if you're not a physician, for sure, get the book Done with Broke, because I read it myself and I learned so much. And the examples that you gave, the stories that you told, the way you phrased money ideas just really, really resonate. Like you said, you broke it down in a way that women understand, in a way that speaks our language. So I want to encourage listeners, definitely get the book, check out Dr. Latifat's podcast. We really appreciate your time and attention today, and we will see you next time.